since it stands between individual objects and in an equal relation to each of them, it has to be completely neutral. Here too, money represents the highest stage of development in a continuous series. This series is logically difficult but of great significance for our worldview, in which each link, although formed according to the formula of the series and an expression of its inner forces, at the same time differs from the series as a complementing, controlling or opposing power. The starting point of the series is formed by the irreplaceable values whose specific qualities are easily obscured by the analogy with money equivalents. There is a substitute for most things that we own, at least in the widest sense of the word, so that the total value of our existence would remain the same if we were to lose one thing and gain another instead. The sum of happiness can be kept at the same level by a variety of elements. However, in relation to certain objects this exchangeability fails, not only because other possessions cannot give us the same degree of happiness, but because the sense of value is tied to this individual object, and not to happiness, the provision of which the object shares with other objects. It is a mistaken conceptual realism regarding the general concept as a completely adequate representation of the particular reality that makes us believe that we experience the value of things by their reduction to a general denominator of value, by reference to a center of value where values present themselves as quantitatively different, but basically of the same kind. We often value the individual thing because we want exactly this and nothing else, even though something else would perhaps give us the same or even a greater amount of satisfaction. A high degree of sensitivity distinguishes very precisely between the amount of satisfaction that a certain possession provides, through which it becomes comparable and exchangeable with other possessions, and those specific qualities beyond its eudaimonistic effects which may make it just as valuable to us, and in that respect, completely irreplaceable. This is very well illustrated, with slight modifications, in those cases where personal affections and experiences make a standard and interchangeable object irreplaceable for us. An identical specimen of the same kind does not, under any circumstances, make good the loss. This could better be accomplished by an object belonging to a totally different category of qualities and sentiments, which would not remind us at all of the former object or suggest any comparison. This individual form of value is negated to the extent that objects become interchangeable, so that money, the representative and expression of exchangeability, is the least individual creation of our practical world. To the extent that things are exchanged for money, but not when they are bartered, they share this lack of individuality. The absence of any inherent worth in an object cannot be more distinctly expressed than by substituting for it, without any sense of inadequacy, a money equivalent. Money is not only the absolutely interchangeable object, each quantity of which can be replaced without distinction by any other, it is, so to speak, interchangeability personified. The two poles between which all values stand are, at one extreme, the absolute individual value whose significance does not lie in any general quantity of value that could also be represented by another object, and whose position in our value system could not be filled by any other object. At the other extreme, that which is clearly interchangeable. Between these two poles things are arranged according to the degree of their replaceability, their position being determined by the extent to which they are replaceable and by the variety of objects that can take their place. This can also be represented by distinguishing in each object the irreplaceable and the replaceable part. Most things participate in both qualities, although we are frequently deceived about this, on the one hand, by the volatility of our transactions, and on the opposite side by narrow-mindedness and stubbornness. Even those things that are purchasable and replaceable by money probably possess, upon closer scrutiny, qualities whose value cannot be completely replaced by other possessions. The boundaries of our practical world are shown in those cases where one of these qualities is infinitely small. On the one hand, those very few values upon which the individual integrity of our ego depends. Where exchangeability is out of the question, on the other, money, the distilled exchangeability of objects, whose absolute lack of individuality results from the fact that it expresses the relation between things, a relation that persists in spite of changes in the things themselves. This ability of money to replace every specific economic value, because it is not connected with any of these values, but only with the relation into which they may enter, assures the continuity of the series of economic events. This series exists in both the production and the consumption of goods. But this is only the material of the series and still leaves the question of continuity and discontinuity open. Every act of consumption initially breaches the continuity of the economic process, and its relation to production is too unorganized, too much a matter of chance, to preserve the continuity of the line of development. One may conceive this line as an ideal which makes its path through the concrete objects in a manner comparable to the direction of a light beam through the oscillating parts of the ether. Into this stream, which pervades the strictly separated objects and controls their value significance, money now enters in order to compensate for the threatened interruption. By giving money for an object that I want to consume, I fill the gap in the value movement that results, or would result, from my consumption. The primitive forms of exchange of possessions, robbery and gifts, do not allow for such a complement of continuity. In their case, the logical connection in the ideal line of the economic process is, so to speak, interrupted. This connection is established in principle only through the exchange of equivalents, and in fact only through money. Money can compensate for the unevenness that exists in any system of barter, and can fill the gap that results from the removal of the object to be consumed. Obviously, money can attain this practical position within the economic series only through its ideal position outside the series. If money itself were a specific object, it could never balance every single object or be the bridge between disparate objects. Money can enter adequately into the relations that form the continuity of the economy only because, as a concrete value, it is nothing but the relation between economic values themselves, embodied in a tangible substance.